Hi and welcome to our online intro session to our complaints handling training. I'm Alison Miles-Jenkins and I'm Chief Executive of Training to Achieve, and for the last 25 years we've been helping people accelerate their performance at work. So, complaints handling, one of my most favourite subjects. Before we go into that in too much detail, I just want to tell you a little bit more about me. I've been involved with the business since I set it up 25 years ago, and we have been one of the UK leaders in complaints handling training. We've gone all over the UK and we've worked internationally as well with clients who really want to make a dramatic improvement to the way their staff, their teams handle complaints. And as you can see on the screen there, we've worked just about every sector with every type of business one way or another. And in fact, back in 2006, we were involved with training hundreds and hundreds of people for a national complaint service that is still going strong today. So as you can see, it's something that we are really involved with, and we're very passionate about it as well. I've also written lots and lots of articles in the press on this subject as well. So what I want to do very briefly is to highlight some overhead points first of all, because this is such an important area if your business, your organisation is really committed to and serious about delivering fantastic customer service, because they go hand in glove. You can't have fantastic customer service if your staff can't handle letdowns and disappointments with their customers. So how your organisation handles complaints is a fantastic measure of your general customer service. Secondly, if you can turn that customer around, you have got, when they have had a complaint, repurchase intention. So in fact, they are actually more likely to come back to you after a complaint if it has been handled satisfactorily than had the complaint not happened in the first place. Now, isn't that strange? The reason is because if you handle that complaint right, they know they can trust you as an organisation, as a business. They can trust your staff if things go wrong. Whereas Joe Blogg's organisation down the road's untried, untested, and therefore they can't trust them. So trust is hugely important. You'll have loyalty, you'll have allegiance, and you'll have advocacy. So it's almost like, you know, your customers, particularly complainants that have been transformed through outstanding service and outstanding ways of handling their complaints, will become, if you like, the free marketeers for your business. They will spread the word. And remember, the cost of escalation when things go wrong, particularly if you're working in a regulated business, a regulated industry these days, the time and the money and the effort to sort it out can be absolutely horrendous. So first of all, what are we really talking about today? So a word of caution here, because just the word complaint can ring alarm bells, because what do we actually mean by a complaint? There are many definitions, and when I work with our clients, sometimes I'm really dismayed at their definition of a complaint, because this is actually, in essence, what a complaint is. It's a complaint is any expression of dissatisfaction by a customer or their representative or their advocate, and then this is the most important bit, whether justified or not. A lot of organisations actually have, a justified complaint in their definition. Well, why would we want to do that? If the client isn't happy and they say it's a complaint, then that is actually what it is. It's not really for you to decide whether it's a complaint or not. The customer's told you. What it is for you to decide is obviously how you're going to handle it and what remedy, if any, is going to be suitable. So you might like, after this video, to go and check your own complaints policy to see how it's worded. There are lots and lots of positives about receiving a complaint, believe it or not. It gives you free market research. It tells you what people are thinking of your business. Let's face it, businesses, organisations, they spend thousands and thousands of pounds on market research. Well, a complaint is actually a free gift. There's great job satisfaction as well. If you can actually turn a grumbling or complaining customer around, it gives people such a sense of satisfaction and self-worth afterwards. And of course, it proves the quality of the customer journey. It's part of continuous improvement, so you're constantly getting feedback in the form of complaints. Then obviously that gives you a chance to put things right, take things to another level. But of course you never quite get there, do you, in terms of an ideal, perfect service, because people's expectations are changing and people are becoming more and more demanding. So it's a kind of constantly moving horizon, keeping the customer happy. And remember, even if a customer does go on to discuss other issues and they don't decide formally to follow an expression of dissatisfaction, they've actually given you really useful feedback. So those sorts of things should be picked up by staff and fed back at team meetings. I can tell you that's very rarely on the agenda. Why is that? It's that free form of feedback, market research. Your managers need that, and they need to be discussing that with your teams at team briefings and so on. Think also about, are you raising expectations in your promotional material, your small print? Do your policies raise expectations that your staff, for whatever reason, can't follow through on? So what do complainants actually want as a remedy? Mostly they actually want an apology. So it's not necessarily they want their money back or they're going to sue you. They just want somebody to say sorry. And in this country we seem to have a really, really bad reputation for doing that. They may also want an explanation of why things went wrong. They may want something actually putting right. And generally, they often want wider systems or policy changes to make sure that no one else has to go through the heartache, the dissatisfaction, the hassle that they've experienced themselves. So it's quite a sort of altruistic aspect, perhaps, to why we complain. Now, I just want to bust a particular myth here. I work with a lot of organisations where they think that if a member of staff says sorry to a customer, then that is actually an admission of liability. Now, obviously, the word itself, sorry, is not going to cause you liability. If you came out and you said, in a hospital, for example, the surgeon comes around to the patient's relatives and say, I'm really sorry, I've just killed your husband, quite clearly there's a liability attached, but it doesn't actually attach to the word sorry. It attaches to the result that you've actually caused yourself. Now, when people are customers and things are perhaps starting to let them down, they feel things aren't really going their way, they actually go through a 4-stage model that I'd like to talk you through very, very quickly. Now, the T stands for trigger. So the trigger is what sets the ball rolling in the first place, so the initial aspect of dissatisfaction. But interestingly, the trigger also relates to life's frustrations, the things that actually have the effect of lowering our tolerance level and increasing our tension. And with that increase in tension comes an increase in our potential or ability to act in ways that we might normally, i.e. we might become defensive, aggressive, we might start to sort of have a battle as the customer with the organisation. So that's the trigger, and obviously it's important that staff understand that. And these kind of interlink, so the T goes down to the I, so arrow down to the I. I stands for interpretation. So this is how the customer, whether coming in face to face or ringing up, starts to perceive the initial reaction to their approach. And that can either be positive or negative. So if I'm a complaining customer and I'm on the phone and I ring in and, after 5 rings, the phone's just ringing and ringing, clearly I'm going to have a very negative impression. If somebody answers the phone with a very sort of sour tone to their voice, as if, they wish they weren't at work, again, creates a very bad impression. And I'm going to be really, really hard then to convert back to a happy customer. If, however, the phone's answered quickly and somebody really positive and cheerful and obviously committed to helping me answers the phone, then I'm going to have a positive impression. And interestingly, even if they go on to have to tell me a bit of bad news, I'm actually going to stay with my first impression, because we humans, we like to think we're right, and that's why first impressions are so important. So if we think, if we've got a negative or a positive impression, first of all, we tend to stick with that. It's very hard to undo. So make sure that your staff know how to use that in their favour. However, if things go wrong, the I leads to A. A stands for arousal. This is our good old fight or flight. Our primitive brain, our primitive response is kicking in. So we might become submissive and get really upset and say, I can't be handling this, and kind of leave the situation. We get so frustrated we just can't work through it. Or we might get aggressive verbally or possibly even physically. So the A leads to B, which of course stands for behaviour. If the member of staff has handled it really well, then hopefully the person will calm down and there'll be a kind of just an assertive dialogue and a kind of win-win problem-solving approach. If not, as I've just said, aggressive outbursts or people sticking their head in the sand and deciding not to approach your organisation anymore with a complaint. And of course, that's where you lose out, because you lose that valuable feedback that I spoke about earlier. So at the top of the toolbox, just a few things to share with you. First of all, it's really important that staff understand when they handle complaints that their way of looking at it, their reality, their map of the world is not actually going to be the same as how the customer perceives it. So the member of staff really has to understand this basic premise of neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, which tells us we all have a different reality. If you can't acknowledge that, then it's going to be very hard for your staff to handle difficult and disappointed customers. We've got some key communication skills. So some of the good old chestnuts really. So obviously having to make sure you've got open questions, you're mastering your question technique. Open questions are really, really valuable to get complainants to let off steam. Our active listening to show that we are really taking their concerns seriously. And there's a little reminder. Our 6 key open questions. Really good way to allow a complainant to let off steam is to say, tell me about, explain, describe. That then gives them permission to share their complaint, all of it, get it out into the open. It really is better out than in with a complaint. And then I just wanted to share with you briefly one really, really popular technique. This is one of the most popular techniques that we share on our courses, and it's called the PACR framework. P stands for when you've got a complaining customer on the phone, face-to-face, you pause. You remind yourself it's not personal. You get your breathing under control. A stands for that magic word, acknowledge. Acknowledge their concerns, but you do that using their words. Never ever say, I hear what you're saying. That's a complete no-no and it's likely to lead to a huge escalation. So acknowledge, show understanding. C then is clarify, because often complainants aren't, because they're being emotionally driven, they're not always clear exactly in their explanations of what they want to have happen. So again, that's where your question technique comes in. And then R, this is a fantastic bit, it's respond. Respond, not react. If your staff react, then they're being emotionally driven by their fight or flight as well. So that is probably the most popular framework that we actually share on our in-house courses. In that PACR framework, the A, as I said, stands for acknowledge, and that is a really, really powerful word to remember. It's kind of an empathetic approach. So take your shoes off and stand temporarily in the shoes of the customer, see it from their point of view. So that's what we mean by acknowledgement, by empathy. And I busted one myth before, just a second one that I very briefly want to touch on. When you've gone through all this effort to resolve an issue with your complainant, don't then say when they thank you, no problem, because obviously there was a problem and you've put it right. And maybe you've kind of, gone to the ends of the earth to put it right for the complainant. So be proud of that. To, say something along the lines of, I'm really glad, Mr. Smith, that between us we've managed to resolve the situation for you satisfactorily. So don't just say no problem and other little cliches like that, sort of shrug it off. And this particular point I really want to leave you with, it's about not thinking about a complaint. Think about it as a resolution. So it's a challenge. You're trying to look for a resolution. Complaint can be perceived by staff as a really, really negative word, and for some they can find it really, really soul-destroying and of concern. So if you encourage them to think resolution, not complaint, it is really quite transformational. So if we change a word, we can actually change a mindset. So if you've liked what you've heard in this short video and you'd like to know more, why not download our free e-guide now, The Essentials of Successful Complaints Handling. You can grab hold of it now, simply follow the instructions on the page. And if you'd like us to come in and run a tailored in-house complaints handling course, whether you're in a regulated or non-regulated environment, we will totally bespoke it for you. Then this is how you get in touch. Inquiries at trainingtoachieveenterprises.com, or give us a ring and I'll personally talk through some options with you. So I hope you've enjoyed this short video and I look forward to hearing from you soon.